Okay guys, good morning and welcome to another tutorial. Sir Arca. So for today, what we're gonna be doing is we will be adding data into the database, but this time we'll be using a list view rather than using a grid view. So why do we use a list view? So the list view is much more better, customizable design for data. But this tutorial, we will not be designing it too much. We'll just allow the function to be, or we will allow the adding function to function well on our program. So the first thing that we're gonna be doing is studio, and we will be creating an empty website. So create new project, then ASP.NET web application. So remember, if you do open your Visual Studio, you could pick the options for web, Windows, and C# for this tutorial. So there's a lot of things that are displayed here, and sometimes it might be confusing which one you would want because it changes depending on the option that you do have and what is installed within your computers. So for this one, we'll be using ASP.NET web application. It's right here because I have already picked it out before, but if you do not find it there, just scroll down and find it here. Okay, so let's go in and move next. Then I will not be naming it particularly. Just please do remember to remember where you have saved it and what is the name of your project and your solution. Okay, so let's click create and let's proceed. So we'll be using the empty website and then just click create so that we will be starting in from scratch. So for this project or this example tutorial, what we'll do is we will be using a built-in SQL server with Visual Studio. So remember, this could be useful for small projects only. If you do have much more bigger projects that you will be creating, please be sure to use SQL Server. So I don't have an SQL Server on my PC, but I do have this TSQL function that is embedded with or integrated within the Visual Studio. So what I will do is I'm gonna be adding a new item, and I will be picking on data and SQL Server database. So we will be naming this as DB persons. So we will just be saving specific datas to our database, which is small data only. So DB persons will be the name of our database. Let's add. So remember, this error is just stating that they will be adding the database in another folder and the name of the folder is data. So just click on yes. It could be placed on the folder like that. You can see. And then what we will be doing is we will be adding a table. So when we double click the database here, DB persons, we will be adding or we'll be seeing the Server Explorer open up. So right click on the table area and add new table. So remember, in our tutorials we did it manually before, but for the purpose of just doing this example, we'll be doing it the much more faster way. Add ID, say the name, person, I'm using paragraph T, the address of the person, paragraph T. We will not allow it to be null, then the age. So this is just an example. Okay, so as you can see, we have here the name table. Let's change it to TBL persons for this example. Okay, and then click on the update button right here, and then update database. There you go. So it is added onto your program, but you need to configure it first later for a data source. So let's just close it this one first, and then let's add just one data. Okay, so let's add one data. So right click on the table and show table data so that you can see has anything. So remember, in our tutorials we did demo a sample wherein we used a query to insert data, but for this one we'll be doing it manually. So John Smith is from New York and his age is around 20 years. We will be adding just one. So let's see. Let's try to add three. So um, Michael Cruz is from Russia. 21. Then number three, we have Michelle Santos. She is from France and she is 18 years old. Okay, so let's close this one up. So click refresh so that we are sure that everything is added, and then close this one. So this is just a sample we needed for our list view. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna be adding a form that will display the data on a list view. So before we did try to add or view data on a data grid, but this is much more better because it's more customizable. So we will be adding a web form where we could view the data on a list view. Okay. So the first thing that we will be doing is we will be adding in a list view first. Okay. And then later on, we will be configuring a data source as we add in the data. Okay. So first thing that we need to do is on this area of the body of our HTML and our toolbox, click on a list view. Go to the data category and then click on the list view and drag it into the design. Okay, so right now it's not yet configured, but we will also need another one, which is going to be an SQL data source. Let's put in the SQL data source. Okay, and then let's go to the design and then let's configure the data source first. Okay, so I will configure the data source db persons. This we did this before. So sample const string is I will be naming the string so that I could remember it properly, and then just create the sample. As you can see, we tested the query and we are seeing the three datas. So click on finish. So we have configured the data source. So let's go back to the source, and what we're gonna do is we will be customizing the list view first. So the first thing that we need to do is to add a item template. So this is where the data will be displayed. So to be able to properly add it, we will be adding a simple table. And this simple table has a row, which is what's represents tr. So there's a table row, and there is some columns. So columns are represented by td. Okay, so since we do have, let's see, we do have about um, 4 datas that will be seen. Let's add in 4 columns. Okay, so remember this represents the columns for our table. And then we will add the data inside. So to be able to add it, we will be typing in %, hashtag eval. Okay, or there is a value, equivalent value, and the value will be coming in from the table. So the first one is id. There we go, and then copy this one, copy and then paste it 3 more times, then just change it to what your field names are. So we have name, we have address, and then we also have age. So the first thing that you need to do is to be reminded that you do have a data source, and the list view needs a data source where you could be able to extract the data from. So data source, we'll be adding a data source here, and then add in SQL data source 1 because that's what's the name of our data sources. So there we go, data source 1 and then data source 1. So right now, the table will be displaying the data coming in from the sources that we do have. Okay, so let's put and go back into the data source. So remember what we're going to be doing is we'll be adding data. into our database. So this is the first part because we still have edit and delete. Okay, so since we are going to be displaying data, we could actually set up some designs in here if ever that the table does not contain any data. We could add in a simple empty data template. So just in case there's no data left on your tables, you could display a message that will be seen by your users. And let's say, for example, if the data is empty, let's say no records, no records in the table. Okay. And then of course, if there is too many files or too many datas in a table, it could be thousands, you just want to specify a number of data that is being seen every page. So we have what we call a data pager. So sorry, just type in ASP data pager. There we go. And on this data pager, we will be adding an ID to it. So the ID is equals to data pager 1. So this is a default usually. And then we will declare how many data we want to see on each page. So for this one, since we do have 3, I'll be stating in just 2 so that we could immediately see the data pager being used. And of course, we need to have the list view that will be controlled. So we have list view 1. Okay. And then of course we're gonna go and run that server. There we go. And then inside the data pager, we need to identify how do we go through the pages. So we will add fields. Then let's identify the design, and we will be choosing in from just a few choices. We will be using the numeric pager field. So we will be using numbers. So just in case there are too many data to be displayed in our design, what it will do is it will display a number below. So let's go to the design. As you can see, this is what it looks like. So it will only display 2 at a time because that's what we have on our source. Okay, and then if it does have a second page or another page, it will display another 2 again, or the maximum is 2 data to be. Okay, so right now everything is fine with this. Since we did have connected the data source, we'd actually try and run the program on our Google Chrome, and we should be able to see it being displayed by 2s. Okay, so as you can see, it's being displayed right now, and you could actually choose from the 2 pages it has been able to generate. So if you do or adept in HTML, you could further customize this one. But for the sole purpose of our demo, we're just gonna be using the basics. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is just below the data pager, I'm gonna be adding a small button for adding a new data. Okay, so let's put in button. Okay, text is button, and then let's add in add new data. Okay, so I think that would be it. Okay, and then if we go to the design area, we will see that we have an add. Okay, so let's put it below. So let's in a BR here. So it will be added below. Okay, so we'll be adding a new data. So if I do click this one, I should be able to go to another page. Okay, so I'll be adding a new web form, a new item, and then I'll be going to a web form to add a new data. Add new add.aspx. We'll just simplify this. Okay, so let's go. So we have add.aspx. Okay, And then what we're gonna be doing is we'll be designing a simple add function here just by simply putting in a table, insert table, and the columns will be around, there will be around, I think, 6 rows and about, let's say, 3 columns. Okay, just to properly customize this one. Okay, so we have here the ID, we have here the name, sorry, also have the uh, address, yes, and then we also have the age. So let's add in some text boxes where we could be putting data steps. And then we'll be adding in button first. So we will be changing the text to be a save button. And of course, we should have an option to cancel. We will be adding a cancel button. Okay, so cancel. Okay. So remember in the web form one, if we do click this, we will go to the add.aspx and add a new data. So this is just to simplify things. So let's put in a code here on the cancel button. So we will just go back to the first web form. So we mark that's redirect, and we'll be adding in a web form one. Okay, so we have the proper .aspx. Okay, but on the other one, on the web form one, if we click here, we should be able to add uh, another code. So response that redirect. Okay, let's show in add.asp. So it will display the add page. So let's go ahead and try this one. Let's see if it will be moving around, going to the other places. So add new data. Okay, so cancel, add new data. So there we go. Okay, so what we're gonna be doing is we'll be adding data so that we can see it on our database. Okay, so let's go now, since we do have it working on the list view. Let's go to the add page and add some codes on the add function. Okay, so let's name this properly first. So this will be txt id. Okay, so let's name it properly. Let's call this one as txt name. Let's call this one as txt address, and let's call this one as txt age. Okay, so the next thing that we're gonna be doing is we will be clicking on the save button that we could code something on it. And oh, I forgot. So we need to add first the class function. So we did this before. Add new item, and then let's click on the class code class, and then let's add in con class. So add. Then let's add the codes we need. So using system.configuration and using sorry. So using system.data.sql. So we will be declaring a public static variable. This SQL connection. Sorry, my keyboard is already broken, so I'm having problems typing on. It's equals to new SQL connection. Okay. Configuration manager dot connection string, sorry, dot connection strings. ah So we did not have an, so that's what the problem is. That connection strings and the name, which is sample con string that connection strings. That's connection string. So be mindful that this has an S, this one does not have it. So this is what we will be using for our connection to our database. So let's go back to the add.aspx and code on our button for saving. So the button for saving will be opening, or we will be creating a string, and we'll be setting a string as save str is equals to, let's put in the query in here. So insert into tbl, I think we had tbl persons, I remember. Okay, and then we will be putting in the informations or the fields that we'll be adding information in. So we have the ID, the name, address. Okay, so it needs to be on, if you do know SQL, you understand how this works. But if you're not familiar with SQL, you need to have it in a specific order, because on the other side, which is on the side of values, you will be adding in informations on the parameter that we will be using, where you could define the values. Okay, so on this side, we'll be adding in a variable called parameters. So these parameters will add in information into the SQL. So let's simplify this as at ID, at name, at address. It does not matter what it's called, because just be sure to use the proper parameter name. So let's say for example, I use AG here. It's not gonna be an issue, because you're naming your own parameter. Does not matter. As long as there is an at sign in front of it, it will not be a conflict on the names of your fields. Okay? So the next thing is we will be creating an SQL command, but to do that, we need to add first using system.data.sql client, be commands, sure to use it, type it down first, SQL command, save cmd is equals to new SQL command, and the SQL is the save str, and the connection is the con class dot con. Then the next is we will be adding in values into our parameters of what we will be saving. So we have the save cmd as our command, but it has parameters that we need to add something or add a value with. Okay, so the values that we will be adding in are the different IDs. Okay, and where will it came from? So I will be getting it from the txt id that text. So do not forget the extension, and then let's copy this and paste it 3 times. 1 2 3. Just change this into name. It's a good thing if you do have set the names properly, so that you could name it. So this does not have issues with me, because I know what the names were. Okay, so this one, okay, so I think this one might have a problem. Let's just test it first later. Okay, so since we've added the parameters, let's open up our connection so that we can execute it. Con that open, and then add in a closure that con that close, and then inside the connection we should be able to execute the query. Okay, so save cmd that execute non-query will execute the save button, and then of course after saving it, let's go to the first form. So we will go directly to the first form stating so that we could immediately show it on our list. Put in Um, let's go back to web form 1 dot ASP. Remember, after saving, it will be saved. Okay, okay, it will be saved, and then it should be able to reflect the data. Okay, so I think that's it. So let's go ahead and try this one. Add in some datas. So that's a very simple code. Oh, sorry. Let's go back first. There we go. So we could see here that we do have 3 datas. So we will be adding a new one. So number 4, let's say uh Janice Smith. Address is Russia again. The age is 21. So if you could save, view it. There we go. We have added the data into our. So the next thing that we will be doing, our next tutorial, is we will be editing and deleting data in our list view. So again, this is Sir Arca, and thank you very much for watching, and I hope you learn a lot. If you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe, or like and share, or comment down below what is it that you want to have in our channel. So what do you want me to demo to you guys? Okay, again, and have a nice day. I'll be seeing you in our next tutorial, which is going to be adding and deleting.